Hi, I'm Davis Bookhart, the Director of the Sustainability Net Zero Office at HKUST. And I want to talk a little bit about introduction to life cycle costing. So, what is life cycle costing and why does it matter? Well, there's three main reasons we think that life cycle costing is very important. First, it helps you understand the cost and benefits over time. Secondly, it incorporates a systems thinking perspective. And third, it helps to avoid unintended consequences. So let me give you a couple of examples. In this case, we have three different products that we'd like to purchase, and now we need to decide which one is going to make the most sense. If you look at simply the capital cost, then it's very clear that option A is the best choice. It's cheaper than all the rest. In fact, it's cheaper by far. And so we might say, well, option A, let's buy that. But what life cycle costing allows us to do is take a look at the overall lifespan of that product or that service and think about all the things that would be included in the benefits and the cost associated with that product. And if we look at it in that way, then we might see that actually the option C is a much better value over time. So why is that? Well, as you can see over time on this graph, you might have two options that start off roughly at around the same spot in terms of the capital cost, but one is a little bit less than the other. But very clearly over time, you see that one starts to cost a lot more and one of them costs a lot less. And this delta between the option one and option two, those are your overall costs or your savings that you might get over time. Now, why is that? It's because you have quite a number of things that are at play. It's not just the capital cost when you buy something. There are other things like the annual operation cost. In this example, you can see that the operation cost of option B is less. And so over time, it's costing less than the other option. You might also find that one of the options might require a little bit more of your staff time. Perhaps it takes a little bit more maintenance or it takes a little bit more specialty attention to make sure that it works correctly. And so that is an additional cost that needs to be accounted for. And you could see that also relates to the increase in the cost of option A. And then here, very clearly, you see a little bit of a bump. And this is one thing that's very important, especially when people are looking at these things from a simple payback. You miss the fact that these items have to be replaced. And this is a clear example of one item can last for about 25 years. The other item needs to have some kind of a replacement about halfway through. So very clearly, an item that will last 25 years is significantly more beneficial than something that would need additional revenue or additional attention about halfway through its lifespan. So with all of these things combined, you can see that option B is definitely the better way to go. But in addition to these three things, you might want to look at things like the socialized cost of carbon. We know that climate change is going to be an increasing burden on businesses and universities and governments, and we are going to have to incorporate the cost of carbon. It's either going to be imposed on us as regulation or there will be some taxes perhaps. And so we can anticipate that over time and see which of these options will be best from a climate change perspective, which will also lower our cost. We also want to assume that utility fees will continue to rise. Electricity will not stay at the same rate forever. We know that it continues to go up over time. And then there will be the ease of getting replacement parts. So some products might have more parts that need to be replaced than others, and so that has to be incorporated. But also, the last item is very important, and what I call intangibles. So to explain this, let's go into a sample case. Imagine for a second that you are responsible for buying a new warehouse for your company. And it's the perfect place, it's the perfect building, except it has one big flaw. It has no fire system. It's too old. But to bring it up to code, your boss is asking you to figure out how do we deal with this. And so what you've learned is that there are two options that you may be able to consider. Option one is that you install a fire suppression system with water sprinklers, alarms, All of this combined will cost about $5 million. Your second option is to buy an insurance policy, and the insurance policy will cover all of your expenses if this building burns down. And that cost is about $100,000 per year. Now, if you look at this from a simple payback perspective, it's very clear that option B is much, much better. You would have to pay year after year after year after year before you would finally get up to $5 million in initial costs. So you might be tempted to say option B is the better one. But remember, this story is about the intangibles. So let's imagine that the worst case scenario happens and the warehouse does go up in flames. And let's imagine also that there was an employee who was also in that warehouse when it went up in flames. Now, the insurance will pay your costs, but it won't bring that person back to life. It won't help your reputation of your business. You'll be known as the company that allowed one of your employees to burn up because you were too cheap to put in a fire suppression system. You might have difficulty hiring new employees because now you've got a reputation as a company that doesn't treat your employees well and puts them in unsafe conditions. And you might even lose a lot of your customers because they don't want to be affiliated with a company that took profits over people. Now, these are all intangibles. You don't necessarily see them on your balance sheet, but they all have to be included if you're thinking about a broader life cycle costing analysis, because they all need to be included to make sure that you make a very good decision in your decisions over time.